that have been marked to be retained, but then some trees have blue W's on them, and it's kind of obvious what that W means. It's a special wildlife tree. If you look up in this one, you can see why this tree was retained. You can see the holes up in the top, big dark holes. And this is, I think, a good indication of the kind of skills that tree markers need and why it's very hard to do this from the Caterpillar buncher. When our guys are leaving cavity trees, you remember yesterday, how many do they have to leave per hectare? 10. 10, right on, 10. Remember, if we ever ask you a question and you're not sure the answer, say 10. It's probably going to be right. So, 10 cavity trees per hectare, but it's not just any tree they're looking for. These guys have to know the different what different kinds of holes are valuable, or what kinds of species will use different kinds of holes. So this is one of the types of trees that would be a very high priority on the retention list. So they have to know what kind of woodpeckers make different holes and what they look like, what kind of other animals would use different kinds of holes. They have to understand a little bit about how different conchs on the trees will indicate different rock columns, because that may be valuable to wildlife, and also has obviously timber values. But does anybody know what these holes, or who made these holes?
The pileated?
Pileated woodpecker. Now, pileated woodpeckers make 3 different kinds of holes. The markers have to know these, and they have to distinguish the 3 different types of holes. Any idea what kind of holes a pileated woodpecker might make? Nest hole, right on. So in the summer, they'll find usually a living tree that has a good central column of rot, not hollow, but rotten. They dig out a hole that's about this big into the rotten chamber, and then they excavate out that soft inner wood for about 1/2 meter in depth. They generally only use those once. So that's one of the types of holes. Any other types of holes a pileated woodpecker would make? Feeding holes, right on. And what kind of insects, or what kind of food do pileated woodpeckers like to eat? Ants. They love ants. They'll also eat wood-boring beetles, but they just love ants. And so ants form in colonies, and they'll make those big rectangular holes. Now, they also make a third type of cavity, which is called a roost cavity. So pileated woodpeckers, some of our woodpeckers are migratory. They're here in the summer, they're gone in the winter. Pileated woodpeckers are year-round residents. So they like to have a nice warm place to sleep at night. What they like to do for a roost tree is actually find a tree that is hollow, not rotten, but actually hollow, and then they'll excavate numerous holes into the hollow chamber, and they go into that hollow chamber at night and sleep. So looking at this tree, again, I think this is probably one of those roost trees, given the way the seam forms there, and if you look with binoculars up through those holes, they don't look neat and clean enough to be nest holes. Usually nest holes are very nice and neat and clean edges. They don't really look like feeding holes, because feeding holes usually go in and get smaller as they go in. These actually do open up. And so I think this is probably, and you can never tell for sure unless you actually see the birds using it, but to me I would guess it's probably a pileated woodpecker roost tree. They tend to be fairly rare in the forest because they're generally a fairly large diameter. They have to have a good column of hollow column, and then the woodpeckers will make the entrance holes into that hollow column.